Last question seeking an oral reply. Mr. Kitson-Yang. President, as the average temperature and rainfall in April this year were higher than those in the same period last year, creating favorable conditions for mosquito growth and breeding, the rise in gravid trap indices occurred earlier this year. Regarding mosquito prevention and control work, will the government inform this council? 1. Since the FEHD, the Food and Environmental Hygiene Department, lowered in August last year the threshold for initiating the strengthened mosquito control work from an area gravid trap index of 20% to an index between 10 and 20% of the number of areas where actions have been triggered to date and the frequency thereof, and whether it will consider further lowering the initiating threshold. If so, of the details, if not the reasons for that. 2. Given that the FEHD's goal is to test by early next year at the latest the application of the mosquito against mosquito approach, which makes use of Wolbachia-carrying male mosquitoes for prevention and control of Aedes albopictus, of the respective locations, scales and timetables of such field trials, and the measures in place to monitor the actual impacts on the number of target mosquito species. And 3. As it is learned that some mainland provinces and municipalities have introduced new technologies for purely physical mosquito control by means of simulating human breathing and body temperature, whether the government would consider conducting local trials. If so, of the details, if not the reasons for that. Secretary for Environment and Ecology. President, the government attaches great importance to mosquito control in order to safeguard environmental hygiene and protect public health. The Interdepartmental Pest Control Steering Committee, chaired by the EEB, has been monitoring the gravid trap index, setting the overall direction of government's mosquito control work, and promoting targeted mosquito control measures jointly undertaken by departments, the community, private organizations, and care teams. In view of the rainy season and the associated risk of mosquito-borne diseases, the EEB convened a steering committee meeting in March this year to provide steer to the strengthening of mosquito control across departments, and met with trade representatives in April this year to appeal for their active participation in mosquito control work. Regarding the questions from Mr. Kitson-Yang, our reply is as follows. 1. The FEHD places gravid traps in different areas across Hong Kong to monitor the activity of Aedes albopictus, and publishes the area gravid trap indices so that different sectors can grasp the mosquito infestation situation and take timely control measures. To step up mosquito prevention and control, since August last year, the FEHD has advanced the threshold for strengthened mosquito control work, which was originally initiated when the indices of an area has reached 20%, that is level 3, to 10%, which is level 2. Between August last year and May this year, the indices recorded 10% or above for 128 times, covering 52 monitoring areas. Under the enhanced mechanism, the FEHD convened special meetings of the interdepartmental task forces on anti-mosquito work to coordinate departments and stakeholders in strengthening mosquito control, conduct risk assessments, and identify locations with more serious mosquito infestation for targeted action. The FEHD will notify residential estates that have subscribed to the gravid trap rapid alert system, advising property management agents and residents to take mosquito control measures. Given the recent rise in gravid trap indices, the FEHD has strengthened mosquito control across all districts, including those with indices below 10%. The district environmental hygiene offices will continue to convene monthly task forces meetings until the indices drop in the winter. From January to May this year, the FEHD conducted over 290,000 inspections, initiated 79 prosecutions, and issued 159 statutory notices requiring the removal of stagnant water or containers. Also, the FEHD has placed more than 3,000 new mosquito trapping devices across the territory, which can suppress larval growth and eliminate adult mosquitoes, and recommended that other government departments adopt the devices at their venues. As of early June this year, the FEHD, together with the Education Bureau, has installed over 980 new mosquito trapping devices in primary and secondary schools and special schools. The FEHD has also worked with the Development Bureau to issue the guidelines on mosquito prevention in construction sites to construction sites and relevant personnel through the Construction Industry Council. Taking into account the mosquito control work has already been strengthened across districts this quarter, and the effectiveness of resource deployment at different levels, the government has no plan at this stage to further lower the threshold for strengthened mosquito control, that is, the gravid trap index reaching at least 10%. The FEHD will monitor the mosquito infestation situation and the effectiveness of control measures and dynamically assess the need to adjust the activation threshold. 2. The theory of mosquito against mosquito involves female Aedes albopictus mating with male mosquitoes artificially infected with Wolbachia, which would result in laying of eggs that will not survive or hatch. In this regard, releasing such male mosquitoes at specific locations should help gradually reduce the local Aedes albopictus population. As male mosquitoes do not bite humans, they do not increase the risk of mosquito-borne disease transmission. The World Health Organization, having reviewed studies worldwide, stated that Wolbachia had significant public health value in combating dengue fever. Singapore and Guangdong have applied this technology for mosquito control. The FEHD has commissioned a biotech company to conduct lab tests for ensuring that Wolbachia-carrying male mosquitoes do not carry pathogens and that their offsprings have no survival capability. Only upon confirmation of safety and effectiveness will the FEHD prepare for field trials. As wild Aedes albopictus may naturally carry Wolbachia, the company must conduct baseline studies to collect data on seasonal changes in mosquito numbers and natural Wolbachia infection rates for comparison with the conditions after releasing Wolbachia-carrying male mosquitoes, so as to evaluate the effectiveness. Upon completion of the above-mentioned lab tests and baseline studies, and after consulting the relevant district council, the FEHD will determine the site, scale, and timetable for field trials. Subject to the work progress, the target is to conduct field trials early next year. 3. The FEHD has been introducing suitable new technologies and products to enhance mosquito control effectiveness. Regarding the mosquito control technology mentioned, the FEHD has conducted preliminary study of its principle and will procure the device for field trials to assess its effectiveness and feasibility of application in Hong Kong. Separately, the FEHD is conducting field trials of another mosquito trapping device imported from the mainland. This device uses special attractants and ultraviolet light to capture adult mosquitoes and employs AI recognition technology to identify mosquito species and numbers, generating statistical data to assist the FEHD in devising targeted measures. The FEHD will assess its suitability for application in Hong Kong based on trial results. Other technologies we use include the following. Mosquito control robotic dogs. Given that it's difficult for frontline staff to conduct fogging operations in densely vegetated areas, the FEHD has introduced a remotely operated robotic dog equipped with an ultra-low volume sprayer. A trial conducted at Qingyi Nature Trail in December last year yielded satisfactory results, and the technology is now applied at suitable locations across districts. Regarding drones, the FEHD deploys drones to survey complex terrain and densely vegetated areas. Through high-resolution photographs, stagnant water and concealed mosquito breeding sites can be accurately identified, reducing inspection time and manpower requirements. Concerning electric stair lift, to reduce physical strain and injury risks of frontline staff, the FEHD has introduced electric stair lift to transport fogging equipment and tools. Effective mosquito control requires joint efforts across departments, sectors, and the community. We will work closely with relevant departments, stakeholders, and the community, and closely monitor the latest developments in mosquito control technologies, introduce suitable new technologies to strengthen mosquito control work on multiple fronts. Mr. Kitson Young. I thank the Secretary for briefing us about the various technologies. Technologies develop rapidly. In the mainland, they use smart technologies as well as physical technologies. For example, they use AI to track mosquito movements. They also use microorganism surveillance system as well as systems that make use of heat and light to kill mosquitoes, and these technologies have been proven to be effective. My question is, when we decide what technologies we adopt, what considerations do we take into account, and what are the government's targets in this regard? Secretary. The Center for Health Protection has been in talks with the mainland authorities to learn about the latest development of relevant technologies. We look at whether these technologies are effective in controlling mosquito. Also, if we are to introduce new technologies in Hong Kong, we look at whether there would be potential problems or issues. We will make assessments in this regard. We look at, for example, the cost effectiveness of the technologies and whether these technologies are suitable to be adopted in Hong Kong. If the relevant technologies satisfy our requirement, we would promote the use of such technologies here. Mr. Scott Leung. Thank you, President. In her major reply, the Secretary said if the graphite trap indices exceed 10%, then the control work will be stepped up. For example, there are task forces that help coordinate departments in strengthening mosquito control, and also the government work with relevant stakeholders to step up mosquito prevention. Yesterday, according to the latest statistics in Cheung Sha 1, the graphite trap index rose from 25.7 in May to 57.7 in June. That means in May you stepped up mosquito prevention and control. However, the government failed to control mosquito population in relevant districts. Also, earlier, there was a case of dengue fever in Cheung Sha 1. So it shows that there are risks. Will the Secretary step up mosquito prevention and control? Apart from the measures you mentioned, are there other measures that you will put in place to prevent mosquito-borne disease transmission in relevant districts? Secretary. We make ongoing efforts to prevent mosquito population growth. We noticed that this year the average rainfall and temperature are higher than that compared to last year. And we monitor closely the graphite trap indices. Apart from paying attention to the indices, we also look at figures concerning dengue fever cases. There are 2 dengue fever cases in Hong Kong. We have an interdepartmental steering committee as well as task forces. And apart from the existing mechanism, we email Housing Department as well as the LCSD to pay extra attention. The relevant secretariat also write to committee members and task force members to step up their work. The first case appeared in Tai Po and the second case appeared in Sham Shui Po. And the FEHD staff conducted site inspections to learn more about the cases. As mentioned, the district environmental hygiene offices hold monthly task force meetings with stakeholders. So we try our best in our anti-mosquito work. Hopefully, the situation will be under control during rainy seasons. Next, Mr. Ken Lee. There are views that some of the outsourced work are handled by the lowest bidders and the methods they use are not professional enough. Or will the government consider assessing contractors' technical levels as well as equipment specifications and adopt those as hard indicators in relation to the sprayers' specifications and models used by contractors? Will there be standards imposed by the government? Secretary. The FEHD in its pest control contracts signed with contractors cover content about effective technology. And the FEHD has been in talks with contractors to see what kind of technologies should be used. That's why we raised such examples in the main reply. Also, in the interdepartmental task forces as well as steering committee, we share with other departments about our experience, and departments, based on their own situation, adopt the technologies that suit them. A lot of government departments implement anti-mosquito work through their contractors. The FEHD in the contract requires contractors to do their work effectively. Apart from making use of contracts, the FEHD, where necessary, would prosecute the relevant contractors if they fail to do their work. Next, Dr. Junius Ho. The FEHD is considering making use of biotech as well as Wolbachia-carrying male mosquitoes to eliminate mosquitoes. So how much money will the government need to spend in order to yield the expected results? Secretary. Currently, we are at the initial stage of applying these technologies. We have to first conduct lab tests as well as baseline studies. We have commissioned a biotech company to conduct the relevant tests for us. Upon completion of these tests and studies, we will decide on the details. At this stage, we haven't decided on the site, scale, and timetable for field trials, so we don't have a specific amount in mind. Dr. Johnny, there have been breakthroughs recently. For example, in the mainland, they use laser technology to eliminate mosquitoes. They make use of deep learning of AI, and through imaging technologies, they could precisely identify movement of mosquitoes. I want to know if the government has learned from the practices in the mainland. Secretary, the FEHD has learned about making use of laser technology to kill mosquitoes. However, we have to make sure the effectiveness of adopting such laser technologies and whether there would be any consequences. By using such technology to kill mosquitoes, we may end up killing other insects as well. So we have to look at the consequences of adopting such technologies. We know that such technology exists, but we have to tread carefully. We need to first study the effectiveness of these technologies first. If we come up with any findings, we will share them with members. Ms. Rebecca Chen, the government has told us about the use of new technologies such as robotic dogs, electric stair lifts, and drones. Yesterday, the government released the latest statistics. In Shamshui-Po and Chengsha-Wan, the gravity trap indices reached 57.7, which is a record high, and there was also a local dengue fever case. So we have to adopt a risk-based approach. By adopting robotic dogs, you won't be able to control dengue fever in local districts. We are worried about dengue fever because it could be transmitted. There is one local case in Shamshui-Po. So will the government deploy extra manpower to control the situation? Robotic dogs could not help control the transmission. So I want to know how you will step up your anti-mosquito effort in local districts. Secretary, we are aware of the situation. In Shamshui-Po, the indices are high and there was a local case of dengue fever. But we don't see any spread of dengue fever in local districts. Yesterday, we released the statistics in Changsha Wan, and we attach importance to the high indices. We will work with the relevant stakeholders to step up anti-mosquito work in the district. If there are suitable technologies that we can use to control the growth of mosquito population, the relevant stakeholders will use them. We will share our experience with the relevant departments and stakeholders so as to lower the gravid trap indices. Next, Mr. Peter Xu. There has been heavy rainfall this year, and we see therefore serious mosquito infestation. I know that the government has deployed staff to inspect certain sites. Have you been to public housing estates or private housing estates or rooftops as well as car parks of these housing estates to see if there is any stagnant water? I want to know how you deal with the situation in private housing estates. Secretary, regarding private housing estates, the FEHD is empowered under the law to deal with private housing estates. If necessary, the FEHD could take law enforcement actions. The district environmental hygiene offices will, based on actual circumstances, deal with, for example, stagnant water. If stagnant water leads to mosquito infestation, the FEHD could initiate prosecution. Mr. Stephen Ho, I finally have a chance to raise a question on this. I know members are concerned about mosquito infestation. The Secretary talked about various technologies such as electric stair lift, robotic dogs, as well as drones that help spray mosquito repellents. And some members asked if it would cost the government a lot of money to use these technologies, and also a member asked about whether the lowest bidders would win. Sometimes the government is too prudent. That's why the Secretary said a number of times that the government has to tread carefully and prudently. So my question is, as the FEHD assesses what kind of technologies it should use, what standards or criteria would it take into account? We need to make breakthroughs in order to adopt new technologies. Otherwise, the indices will keep rising. It's been 22 minutes, so I'll be brief. I know that next week there will be an oral question at the council meeting that is about using new technologies. I believe the government can share more with members in this regard.